The title of this evening's Dharma talk is not much different than any Dharma talk I ever give. I've been given hundreds and hundreds of Dharma talks, kind of always talking about the same thing with a different title. And the title of this one is Trying to Control. How many times have you said that to yourself? I got to get control of myself, or I've got to control this, or she needs to get control of herself. I just had someone recently say it very, very pointedly. You should have controlled yourself. And what did I do? I agreed with them. I should have. Just a natural thing to say that. We should control ourselves. But it may be a good idea to watch all the ways in which you have no say-so. You have no control about anything. The illusion that you have any kind of say-so at all perpetuates this circularity, this illusion we call samsara, and it perpetuates the suffering in ourselves, the frustration, the disappointment, failure, all of those other fancy words that go along with our desire to what? Control everything. And as I've probably said this so many times, when I start to say it, I can say, I've said this a few times. Of course, we can control. I can pick this up and I can move it over here. And then when I do that, what do I do in my mind stream? I conclude that I'm in control. At a very simple level, there's very simple areas of control that have to do with the part of the illusion that is so relatively substantial. There's nerve endings, there's sound, there's sight, there's agreement. We all see that. But if you're a meditator and you have the intention to see the truth beyond the relative truth is fine. And as long as you won't get an accident or get some kind of an illness that ends your life sooner than the normal span, shall we say, then we continue to have this illusion that we can say this, we can do that. Not too long ago, I say not too long, several years ago, I was giving a teaching where I said you may have to kill somebody. You don't have any say-so about that. I'm not just talking about necessarily somebody walks out between two parked cars and you kill them out inadvertently. You actually may have to take somebody's life. You may be in a situation where there's not even a choice, you just do it. Unlikely that will happen, but it might. And there are different ways that can happen. Just like with this car wreck, this young man on the 13th was racing. So you can imagine how the person who was racing with him felt. You may have to kill somebody, or you might feel like you killed somebody. Horrible, horrible, just terrible thing to happen. And 5 days ago, this is all fine. Everything's good. Everything's doing well. You do not have control. I'm not saying you don't have some control. That means nothing just because you can control a little bit. I'm sure you've noticed that sometimes you prepare a meal and you screw something up. Well, why didn't you control yourself? Because you put in the wrong ingredients, or you thought that was sugar and it was salt, or whatever. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you, but it probably happened. Certainly has happened to me. Trying to control is the trying to control that seems to add on to the push or the pull or the aggression, the passion, aggression, ignorance that is kind of embedded in that part of the consciousness we refer to as the ego, or the narcissism, the self-centeredness, and which is quite often is shielded by pride. People who are full of pride don't even know they're self-centered because pride works. It actually works. You actually can be full of yourself and never really have any way of looking at your self-centeredness, at your narcissism. Especially as part of your project is to make sure nobody ever sees that. Make sure no one ever sees that you're a narcissist. How do I know? I'm a narcissist. That's how I know. I couldn't know. I couldn't teach this. I couldn't talk about this unless I saw this here. Did I get rid of it? No, it's still there. I'm not trying to control my narcissism by making sure no one sees that. That worked just fine until I met Coben. And all he did was just point at it and walked away and never looked back and really never talked to me again. One teaching, just observe. Find out who this is. Find out who this is. Find out. Don't get your identity from your culture, from ethics, from morality, from right and wrong. Please don't do that. The whole world is doing that. How well is that working? People that buy into that right and wrong situation use it on each other. I'm not saying that some people don't have wonderful, good, kind, and loving intentions. Of course they do. But the people that don't have that kind of loving, kind, save all beings, or be with all things, or help others, or just brotherhood, you could say, they use that against you because they know you're manipulated by your attachment to right and wrong. And so they're able to go in and just abuse you, to use a conventional word. They have no idea that they're in the middle of an illusion also. So find out who you are. You can do it. You can do it. There's a way. This is not the only way, but this is a way where all that you're being asked to do, if you come this direction and ask me, as I say, turn sideways, look at something that's not moving, and just watch the mind stream continue to produce bullshit. And don't stop it. Don't control it. Don't clear it up. I'm not saying there aren't hundreds of teachings that take you another direction. Atisha's 7 points of mind training is full of, well, you know what I'm saying, if you read any of that, ways to deal with it or fix it. And there's also areas in there where the 59 slogans where it will encourage you to look more closely at it. Seems to be necessary for some people to work on fixing it for a couple of decades first. With me, it was about 17, 18 years. And then another 10 before I realized what was being pointed at. So maybe 27 years. I'm very slow, so perhaps you'll do better. So just FYI, there is now another transmitted priest in our Sangha. Sokuzan Hogen is now transmitted. She still has some robe sewing to do and things, but she's fully transmitted. So if I pass tomorrow, that's the transmitted priest that is overseeing. Overseeing is a good word. Say she's not my Dharma heir. I'm not going to do that to anyone again. She won't be the only one if I live long enough. And she has had to, because of this emergency, has had to travel up to Elk Rapids to be with her son, whose close friend has passed away a couple days ago. So part of the practice of seeing that we're trying to control, as I said a moment ago, is seeing that we can't. Rather than going to what we can control and trying to reinforce all the credentials we're getting out of controlling things or being able to control this or that, is to see that we do not have a say-so about things that are happening. We can't decide the weather. We can't just decide to, I think what was the person that said I should control myself. I said, yeah, just like an alcoholic is going to control himself. Just control yourself. Don't drink. Just control yourself. Don't be that way. Don't feel bad. Don't be depressed. Control yourself. You know that when someone starts talking to you that way, that they have been successful at covering up the areas of their consciousness where they know they cannot control, and emphasize the areas where they are in control. You can live your whole life this way. Billions of people are living like this. If you're listening to me, you don't have to do that. I'm telling you, you do not have to believe your thoughts. You do not have to believe your emotions. But if you do believe them, thoughts and emotions, you'll be run by those thoughts and emotions. They will be your touchstone, because those thoughts and emotions protect that part of the consciousness that thinks there is someone who needs to have control. You don't need any control. Things are going to happen regardless of what you do or say. Some things will get better, amazingly. Some things will get worse, amazingly, or disappointingly. It goes around and around. Look closely at it. It's difficult to look closely if the thinking process is empowered to such an extent that that whole muscle-bound area of the mind called thinking is in the way of everything you're trying to see. You're looking at something instead of seeing what's there. You have a name for it, an interpretation. Who owns it? What belongs to? Why it should be dusted off? On and on and on. Constant commentary on everything. Other people and ourselves. If you realize what this is, who this is, and what this situation is we call other, you won't know it. Because the fundamental issue at hand here is belief in a separate self that identifies with the consciousness in such a way that it presents an other that is doing something else. Everything is happening in front of you is your responsibility. One of the ways to get out of this temporarily for 3 months, 3 years, maybe 3 lifetimes, is to blame others for how you feel. If you're having an emotion and you're blaming someone for it, then it just goes in circles. Do I do that? Yes, I do that. Otherwise, I can't talk about it. And I'm not interested in stopping myself from blaming others, because I know there's no one to blame and there's no one doing any blaming. I'm looking at it. I'm inviting you to do that. I'm inviting you to be genuine. Be the karma that's arising as the shape of your ears, the color of your eyes, the tone of your voice, your ability to sleep or not sleep, or to think very, very clearly about everything and make a lot of money. Not many people are teaching in this way. And if you were listening to me, you're probably ready to hear this teaching. Because if you weren't, you'd say, I really like what Dalai Lama says, or Thich Nhat Hanh says, or somebody else, and we won't be here long. You'll be off studying with them. Should you do that? Probably should. I'm not here to promise you anything, convince you of anything, other than to suggest to you, you can see what this is yourself. You don't need to get it from me. I am just pointing at it. And it may be uncomfortable if you get very close to me, because that's my only motivation here, is to help you see your true nature, no matter how you feel about me. Are there any questions? I can continue, or I can respond to questions, or we can do both.
James Bowen.
Go ahead.
Does having no one to blame also mean no one to praise?
Yes.
All right. And with all things, you're still free to choose to do it if you wanted to, though, right?
What?
You're still free to choose to do it anyways if you wanted to. But
No, you don't make choices. If you think you do, then you're going to continue to go in circles, which you think is a straight line. You do not choose anything.
What's the reasoning behind that?
There is none. I don't use any reasoning. If I use reasoning, I'd be in the same shit pile the rest of the world is in. Why are you smiling? I know why you're smiling. There is no reason. It is not, James, It is not reason. Not that reason doesn't lead up to it. There are powerful, powerful teachings out of the Buddha's Dharma that are all about reason. And I'm not getting rid of those, but if you're listening to me, you've already read all of that. You've already thought about that. And now you're ready to see what this is yourself. You're going to see it. I want you to see it. That includes you, James.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank
Yes.
Divine, so when it looks like we're making a choice, that's really just dependent origination that we are watching. Is that true?
That would be a way of saying it. If you think you're choosing between this and that, then that's confusion. And that is buying into the illusion that there's a right and a wrong, or a correct and an incorrect. But if you just watch what you're doing, you'll see that what you're doing, there's no person there. That you may reach for this or reach for that. You may have a story behind it, but you'll see that it's invented. Like you like collies better than Cocker Spaniels. You don't? See, I rest my case. More?
Divine, a slightly different direction. You had said that whatever is happening out here is really a reflection of ourselves, or is it our mind that we're watching?
So all we have are words, and we have to use words to approach any of this. So you could say that everything you see is mind. That is a traditional way of saying it. Everything you see is consciousness only. The things that show up in it, this item, that, this red, blue, night, day, should on all those things are parts, aspects, facets of the illusion that make it seem so convincing. And we're not trying to get rid of it. We're not trying to disbelieve it. That's not an appropriate way to do it. We're trying to see that we believe it, see that we disbelieve it, and see that we ignore it. Awareness, awareness, awareness. It's not about changing a thing, controlling anything. The only reason we sit still, call it meditation, sit down, hold still, shikantaza. Whatever happens, that's your meditation. If you're falling asleep, meditation. If you're daydreaming about something that you want to do or you should have done, or some meditation. Awareness, awareness, awareness. It takes a while for the awareness to start to, it's like for a long time, all you see is clouds. You don't realize that without the sky, there'd be no clouds. And when you see the sky, or when you understand what the sky is, you realize that you're not seeing anything. This is the beginning, using this image, this is the beginning of the understanding of Buddhist teaching called shunyata, or emptiness. More?
Divine, so when we see ourselves controlling, we're trying to control a situation, besides that being an illusion, that is our mind, and it's our ego mind, Alan?
That part of the mind that feels there's a central person, authority, who's getting ahead or is losing, or has any positionality on anything in any time or space that is identified with this body. Just like if you were to die right now, nothing would happen. Who you actually are, nothing would happen to it. The illusion, parts of the illusion would fall away, namely your body. You're not going anywhere. Your actual identity if it's identified with this body, then it might be quite a while before you even realize that you no longer have a physical form. How do I know this? I don't know it. I don't have the knowledge like that. I have knowledge that this is a white stick. That's about it. The knowledge about what I'm talking about is I'm looking at that. But I'm not looking at it in the same form I am a stick or a cloud or a person or the back of my hand. I'm looking at that in the consciousness. More if you have it.
Divine, so when we're watching ourselves controlling or attempting
Yes.
to control,
Yes.
we are watching the identity, the belief in a solid self.
Yes. And it's pretty substantial when you watch it, but if you don't push it away because it's unreal, or you don't bring it towards you because you want to validate it, and you don't turn away or distract yourself from it because it's not meaningful or has no import or it's just bothersome or any other number. Do anything with that at all, and you continue to go in a circle. Just like the moon goes around the earth goes around the sun. All the basic things out there, including atoms, as far as I know, I've never seen one, are going in circles. That's the nature of samsara. It's the nature of illusion is to go in a circle. And the nature of fundamental reality is nothing happens. And that's available to you right on this cushion. I'm not saying it won't take you 30 years of just watching the movement. You can do it. You have to do a lot of it. And if you're doing it correctly, in other words, you're just observing, your ego is going to squirm more than likely. And if you get too close to someone who is looking at this and endeavoring to teach this, your ego is going to squirm because you don't want someone looking right at your insanity. More?
On divine, when we're watching someone else or what appears to be other trying to control, what is that?
I'm not following where you're going. I follow what you're saying, but I'm not following what you're wanting to know. You say, what is that?
Well, if we watch the controlling within ourselves, see ourselves trying to control,
Yes.
that is a chance for us to see our solid
Yeah.
identity, our
Yes.
belief in a solid
Yes.
identity. But if we watch somebody else trying to control,
Yes. It's a
that's
question.
just movement.
Excuse me. Well, we personalize it because it helps us impute that there's somebody over there who's out of control or somebody else over there who's acting a certain way that's inappropriate. Excuse me. It's not that they aren't functioning in a way like that, but if we do anything with that, then it reinforces our separation from that, reinforces the original misunderstanding or mistaken identity that there's a person who's viewing something. Subject, object. You're not really separate from what you're viewing. You're also not the same as that. That's why it doesn't work with logic or reason. Those are made up of structures that interact in a very reasonable way. Reality does not do that. Further questions? Not Sumi.
Not Sumi bowing. What is the trying and trying to control?
It's just desire. We see things are going this way and that way, and then we look for ways that we could push that down or get more of something or have something there's too much of, get it to back away, trying to control it. We're always doing it in some way. I'm constantly trying to control my skin pain. I have neuropathy, so I'm always trying to find some way of doing that. So I'm not trying to get people to stop controlling so much as I'm trying to say, be very aware of the way in which you're controlling, and those areas of control you probably need to do. You need to control some things. But just because you're controlling this movement here or any other movement doesn't mean that when emotions come up that you need to stop them, control them. When impulses come up, you need to stop that impulse. It's two things, very complicated in terms of dependent origination, or this cause that, cause that, cause that, cause that, cause that, and 15 billion uncountable numbers of things cause one situation. This can't happen without countless things pushing it or affecting it. So it's about observing that rather than stopping it. And it's about observing that rather than manipulating it or changing it. But if you do try to stop it or manipulate it or change it, and immediately it becomes an awareness practice. It immediately, just like if you're sitting, you're daydreaming, awareness practice. You're falling asleep, awareness. Awareness that you're falling asleep is much more helpful than succeeding at not falling asleep while you're meditating. You don't need that. You don't need to be a good meditator, living up to some kind of standard of mindfulness. This is just, and I only can say this from having tried to do this for 25 or 30 years. That's how I know about it. I was taught other than the way that I teach in some respects.
Not Sumi bowing. Does the trying to control like reify or sort of strengthen the thing that you're trying to control?
It can, especially if you're trying to control something by keeping it back or pushing it away or some way, it will tend to get stronger because it's what you're pushing on is an illusion. So if you push on the illusion, it's almost as if the illusion said, well, okay, I can continue to be I'll be a stronger illusion than the illusion that's pushing on me. So it's kind of like the way warfare works. It's not that if somebody comes after you, you should be just peaceful no matter what. No, maybe you should smack them one. I mean, it needs to be the situation itself. I teach out of situations. I function all day long out of situation. And how do I feel about it? Pretty lost most of the time. And I don't mind. There's nothing to be found. If you think there is, an ego wants a piece of that, wants to be found, wants to get something, wants to accomplish. Me. Materialism, Trungpa Rinpoche talks about it in all of his teachings and his book that we study once or twice a week, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism More.
Natsumi bowing. Is there an aspect of the perspective always being right within what is arising rather than from the outside?
Could you paraphrase that? I feel that you're headed in a direction, but I want to make sure that what I respond to is what you're asking about rather than what I think you're asking about.
You said,
Are you
well,
sure?
yes, I understood you as saying that as the situation arises,
Yes.
awareness will allow us to kind of respond in that situation as it arises.
Basically, the teaching part of it is just receive it. Whatever shows up, smelly stuff, fragrant stuff, inconsequential, just receive. Can be very boring in a sense. Could be entertaining, could be, but just keep it as simple as possible. Receive. Eyes produce no sights, ears produce no sounds. Taste produces no flavors. There's a little bit of interaction there, but not much. The mind actually doesn't produce thoughts. It thinks it does. And that's part of where it gets its credentials from. And it also is happy to join in with anything you're seeing, smelling, tasting, feeling, or hearing and tell you what that is. Interesting thing about consciousness, the way that works. But the five skandhas, form, feeling, perception, concept, consciousness, or form, feeling, perception, memory, and consciousness is another way of talking about the production of the fourth skandha, memory, thoughts. One who is, to use the fancy word, one who is realized or liberated from the attachment to passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear, all of those there is no longer being regulated. That person, the five skandhas they don't hook up together anymore. They're still form, there's still touch, they're still seeing, they're still hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, even thinking, but there's no one who sees, there's no personhood behind it. There's no one who feels, there's no one who is this body, there's no one who, any of those forms, no one who thinks. There's just thinking. There's just seeing. There's just feeling. There's just perception. It's just that, nothing else, nothing extra. And this is another way of describing in a conceptual way using names, liberation.
Thank you.
And it's not so much something you can do. It's more like you just stop covering that up. You just stop coming to conclusions or judgments or opinions, or you just stop blaming. But you might have to watch yourself blame for a long time before it just, you can say it kind of occurs to you like, it's not like you even think I should stop blaming. You just stop blaming because it just seems kind of ridiculous to point at something that is like, it's like looking in the mirror and it's all because of you. You're looking in a mirror. It is a mirror. The song of the jewel mirror, Samadhi. Okay, Samai. Yes, sir.
Elon Bound. When talking about the Dharma, you often will use the phrase, just a way of talking about it.
Yes,
Does that phrase also apply to relative or mundane situations?
if I understand the question, I feel it does. Anytime you use words, it's a relative world. It's just relative. Red, white, blue, pink, yellow, hot, cold, up, down, back, forth, life and death. All of those relativities just describe situations and so on. Is that what you're asking about?
Thank you. Yes, I'm trying to find a way to go into an area that you mentioned earlier and that you've mentioned regularly, that be genuine doesn't mean do whatever you want.
No,
So in terms of just a way of talking about it, it seems like that would be an area that people might use the word control. Where
it would.
there's an illusion of control. You don't really have control, but insofar as you're in the illusion, try to have some kind of control if you're not supposed to just act out whatever shows up.
There's going to be something there, but when that starts to show up, then another thing I often say, it's just another way of referring to the precept of patience, or the paramita. It's don't do anything unless you have to. You won't do much. If you really look at everything you're doing, and if you don't have to do it, you don't do it, you're not going to do much. You might get out of bed, but you might not go anywhere. You might eat, you might not. You might go back and take another nap. You're just doing what you really need to do. So you really come down to a very primary, simple, rudimentary situation where you've simplified everything. Even Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche referred to himself as, in the title of his apprentice piece in his book, one of the first books he published called Mudra back in the late 60s. Mudra, and it says, referred to himself as Chogyam, the Kasulu. Kasulu is Tibetan for simpleton. Not an important person, simpleton. So it's about seeing that. You may, if you see it, then yes, you may actually find that you are exercising some control out of the awareness of what's happening, rather than some control out of your preconception or your protocol, or you're obeying or making sure everyone knows that you're an ethical person. You're going to act the way other people think you should act ethically, instead of in the situation. Open your heart, be with all things. Whoever shows up, you cannot lay a bunch of, you can, but if you do that, you've actually missed who's in front of you. If there's any possibility of actual compassion arising, which belongs to no one. Compassion isn't something you do, it's something you are. And if you are that, you might not see any emotion at all, other than you do not interfere with others, unless you do. And if you do, it might be outrageous. That's to be observed, not, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this, or should have done other. The shoulds and shouldas are just rampant everywhere. So to come back to your question, I would say less is better. And then if you do find yourself controlling something, moving it from one place to another, it's coming out of a very raw area of consciousness called perception only. You're just perceiving. You're not creating a future based on fear or paranoia, and you're not creating a past, even though there was one, based on regret or anything. You just don't set up standards for anything anymore. It can be very lonely, but then on the other hand, there isn't anyone to be alone. So it's a different take on loneliness, perhaps more.
There have been times in the past, and this may be a poor example, but there have been times in the past when you've made comments about trying to, for lack of a better word, control your speech on YouTube. Oh, I should have said that. Oh, I can't say
Yes.
that. Strike that. That seems like an area where, like you're talking about,
Yes,
you're aware that it's an illusion, but you're still functioning within that illusion
yes,
according to them.
yes. Because they could shut me off if I swear too much, couldn't they? Yeah,
Certain words.
huh? Certain words like Philadelphia. Or what's that other word?
Kentucky.
Way ahead of me. So, yes, I say it's so extremely relative and it's so complicated. It's just like, it's not 15 things. It's just, it's countless. So many things, and you never know when you're functioning in the situation, what to do next as some kind of a protocol. Well, this is happening, so therefore you don't set up standards. This is an ancient teaching. Go ahead.
You know, like, so in that situation, then, if the control language is one way of talking about it, and it may be an unskillful or cumbersome way of talking about it, is there another way that you could talk about what you're doing when you're trying not to say things that are gonna get you shut down?
I just think it's simple. Nothing happens, and then I notice I shouldn't say that. It's that simple. I just said, calliope, bad word, calliope. I just said that, and then I realized the dynamic I'm here. Occasionally, although usually there's something, I mean, I swear occasionally, but if there are very young people or children in the room, I won't. I don't, I'm like, I have to turn it off. On occasion, that changes depending on the dynamic in the situation. I generally do not yell at people unless I have to. If you hear me yelling at somebody, I'm looking at someone that is probably a student, maybe for 10 minutes, maybe for 3 days, maybe for another week. I cannot help, I don't control that. And I'm not going to kid myself into thinking that I can control it. I can't. It's an embarrassment from the point of view of ego, but from the point of view of there's no one here, I don't mind. I know what my intention is. As you've heard me say it to anyone who will listen to me for 10 minutes, I'm here to help you. And you may not like the way I do that. Quite often, lately, this has been the case quite a bit, but a lot of the time there, people are projecting, rather than actually seeing what I'm trying to do. People totally miss my intention, busy with their own thoughts. Go ahead, sir.
You know, about it. It seems like in order for that teaching to work, we would have to be uncomfortable sometimes. Like the fact that you could teach in a way that makes someone have a negative response doesn't seem like a bad thing. It would seem to me alarming and suspicious if there were never any responses to your teaching. It seems like a lot of the teaching is pushing.
It is quite a bit of it is. And people do this in different ways. Kobun was the softest teacher you could ever meet, person, Buddhist monk, until you ask him for help. That was my experience. And I never talked to anyone else who got the kind of help I got. I actually asked several people, what is this? What? No, they didn't even recognize what I was going through by having received teachings from him. Further questions?
James Ballin. Does a rock that meditate float in the ocean?
Pardon me?
Does the rock that meditate float in the river?
Got a big grin on your face. I'm not sure what you're getting at. Does the rock, did you say a rock that meditates float in the river?
Yeah.
No, it sinks. It sinks.
All right. So, then should meditators take swimming lessons?
Explain what?
Take swimming lessons.
No, they should drown.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. We got a salute that time. Further question? Yes, you chew.
Bowing. When you say you're here to help us,
Yes,
is that help us ultimately as opposed to relatively?
there could be some relative, but mainly it's ultimately. You have your whole relative situation. Sometimes people come this way and ask about this or that. So, and I may try to give someone some feedback in that area, but not too much. Mainly as I'm looking at the way in which you're working with your mind and encouraging you to see more clearly who you are, what your identity actually is, and what this out here actually is. That's what I'm endeavoring to do with everyone. But some people I talk to, it might take a while, might have to yell at them a few times. And they'll either run away or else we'll have some kind of a connection that they'll be able to deal with that yelling or so-called, whatever kind of treatment you want to call that. We had some of that happen here, because you were here, you're both here, and that was a person I was dealing with, person I've been talking to for years. Not just this one little incident where I barked at them and was intense with them, but that didn't look too good to you guys. It probably didn't look good to anybody. It didn't look good to me either. Didn't feel good. So, I mean, I can't go on and on about that, but it's that kind of thing. I don't make a choice about that. I just don't. I don't say, oh, I've been pretty hard on Joe. I think I'll lighten up a little bit. I don't have that choice. If I have that choice, I should take this off and step down off this ton and go home. Which I think a few people wanted me to do lately. Yes.
Is ultimate help at odds with relative help?
No. It's not at odds. There might be a lot of differentiation there, of course. But it's not at odds with it. Fundamental help is eternal. Relative help is impermanent and full of suffering and grasping at self. Three marks of existence. More question. We have a spiritual path, but we have all kinds of mundane. We have a light bill that we're getting more and more difficult to keep this place open. We don't charge a fee particularly. I mean, occasionally for some retreats, we might charge or ask for donations. So there's all kinds of relative things, and then our health and our food situation, and there's no, I don't know what to say about that. We need to take care of that too. But we also need to see our true nature, spend some time on the cushion, spend some time studying the Dharma others. If you took advantage of all the opportunities for practice that are offered in this monastery, you wouldn't have much time to do anything else, as you probably know. But so you have to take time off to make a living because our society does not, might provide for some spiritual paths, but not this one. You might have to live in Japan or China or someplace. Maybe not China. I don't know. More?
Sometimes it looks like they're at odds, like what I might need relatively would be to take a break or to not sit for an hour, but to work out for an hour or something mundane like that.
I'm totally in favor of that. I've had people come and say, I've had people say, I have a rock swing, I'd like to take it off. Let's see what that's like. I said, go ahead. Or people say, I can't sit. I have some people who are fully ordained that don't come here as much as they probably should. If they're wearing a robe, they really should be here as much as possible. But they don't. And what do I do about it? I just watch them. Unless they ask me about it. Do you follow a little bit what I'm saying? I don't know what it's like to be you. I don't know what it's like to be anyone here. But if you say, if somebody just sends a text or we're in touch with each other in the monastery, not feeling well, I don't go and question you and question your integrity, even if have not been well for weeks. I might say, how you doing? Are you feeling better? Have someone come over or to check in on you. But we, trust each other. I don't know what it's like to be the person who just stays away. Just like the one person several people who just left. I can't question that. Do I question it? Yeah, it's very questionable. But I really fundamentally don't know what it's like to be them and what it's like to deal with their suffering or their difficulty. So I feel they're probably doing the best they can. Apparently don't need my help. Is that helpful, what I'm saying? Just like if you were to say, well, I can't meditate today because I didn't get enough sleep, so I need to take a nap instead. I don't see anything wrong with that. You already have the intention to meditate. That's what's important. Not that you meditate. Big misunderstanding everywhere. Never have to meditate. Have the intention to meditate. That's enough. Will you meditate? Probably. But maybe not as much as your ego thinks you should. You follow a little bit? You know why I'm smiling, don't you? No. Just feels better than frowning. It's a good question. I feel like I am not really doing justice to it. So if you have a further layer of that you want to ask about, I'd be happy to respond.
If in a particular situation, ultimately, it would be helpful to sit for 5 more minutes to see more deeply, but relatively, I need to get up. If
I would-
I,
Would get up. Excuse me for interrupting. I'd get up. There'll be another time where you just sit for a little while longer, rather than have some kind of a either or happening in your head. Just get up. Getting up and staying there are not two different things. If you think it is, then we just continue to fight with our world, but we just fight with it. Instead of it's just a natural state. It's not even a state, it's just consciousness that has no longer aligned itself with a separate succeeding or failing human being. So, you have a question? Yes.
Yeah, not see me bowing. Are you just now speaking of maybe a distinction between the intention to meditate and trying to control meditation?
Yes, it's exactly what I'm talking about. You don't need to control anything. You have the intention to meditate, and then you see if you meditate or not. It's a subtle area. A person might not run into that for years of meditating and making themselves meditate. Or coming to a monastery and aligning themselves with a structure here. Those of you who live here notice it's fairly easy. If you don't have to decide, you just follow the form. What's next? Time to sit. What's next? Time to eat lunch. What's next? What's next? More about that?
Not right now.
Yes.
When you're bowing, in terms of meditation, as a Dharma teacher, can you tell when one of your students has not or has been sitting?
If I'm around them and listen and talk to them somewhat, I have an idea. Just like if I'm around somebody and I have an idea of whether they're using cannabis. And if they've been drinking Jack Daniels. So what am I saying? I'm saying that the variation shows up if you're here and if you're on receive, which you're on receive, everyone here's a meditator, you know what it's like to just listen, just observe. You may not be able to do it all day long, but if you have an idea of that, you spend time doing that, you realize that you really can see more deeply into what's happening with any person by receiving. Especially if that other person is doing a lot of producing. Good to listen to people. It's one of the most helpful things you could do is just listen to someone. The only thing you might do is just cock your head a little bit as you listen. Say more. What do you mean by that? Or I see what you mean. People need someone to talk to that doesn't give them any dumbass advice about stuff. Yes.
When you're bowing, you also encourage us as meditators to spend time in solitary confinement, retreat.
Solitary retreat, yes, good idea.
What's good about it?
But it just simplifies everything. So there's not much happening. You have a wall, you have a bed, you have a teapot, you have food, you have a place to go to the. Want to hear more?
You said a teapot.
Well, I would have a coffee pot, but I'm talking about most of you more weaker people. Can't handle coffee.
Is there a downside to a solitary retreat?
The only downside is to that you're away from your job or away from your family or away from your other activity that's distracting. You're just in there, you're just holding still. You're just spending 8 hours a day or whatever the time may be that you come up to. And just watching what comes and goes in the mind stream. You listen to the stories in your mind and you don't hang on, reject, or do anything with it if you can. And if you do get involved in it, you also are aware of that. Good idea. What you're doing is just taking that blade of awareness and just sharpening it. You're not spending too much time chopping vegetables, which makes the blade kind of dull. Thinking. Analyzing, subtracting, dividing, blaming, accrediting.
So you find if everything is Buddha nature, or everything, maybe that's the wrong word, has Buddha nature,
Is Buddha nature.
is Buddha nature,
It's-
then what, how can meditation benefit the world?
What?
If everything is already perfect,
It's already perfect, but the consciousness that is wound up in a knot in here, the paranoia mind that's identified with this body is doesn't realize that. It's all closed off in the dark. So this is, you stumble into the path, which most people don't, but the ones that do, you stumble into it, it's the opportunity you can open that up. And you have to open it up by seeing the way it's closed. You can't just pry it open with some kind of special techniques, though sometimes it's taught that way. And nobody gets that, but just look at it, it'll open up.
promise.
No, it's a threat. It might work better.